Welcome to our Meet the Experts Directors panel. I'm here with Michelle MacLaren from Coyote, David Paul Meyer from The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, Kenny Leon from Mahalia, Lisa France from Queen Sugar, and Susanne Bier from The Undoing. Now, the pandemic has kind of been like the elephant in the room for everything to do with the entertainment industry in the last year. And I know I've touched upon it a little bit with a couple of you, depending on how it's affected your work over the past year. What has been like the biggest challenge of this era from a creative standpoint, going, whether you have a project in development, whether you've been in production, having things come out, it's really affected everything. So let's start with Kenny.
I think it's been a actual great challenge, and one of the things about the pandemic, except for, I lost family members, I missed being in the rooms with the creatives, but everything else about this time, this reset has been really good. And I think that, if you're a writer or a director or an actor, if you're the same artist that you were last year at this time, I think you're going to be left behind. So I think that the writing is stronger, different. The acting is more committed. I think there's an understanding about why artists want to be involved with certain projects. So it's really been creatively, it was challenging shooting the film, trying to figure out how to make the big thing smaller. And some of that was good. Some of the challenging with editing, with on the computer. I miss being in the room with my editor. But certain things about that are good. And I hope after this time, that allows some of us directors to work on 2 or 3 projects at the same time without producers demanding our full attention.
How about you, Susanne?
I mean, it certainly has been a time for reflection and a reflection about how we work and the stories we are telling and what we are doing. It's also been really painful. I mean, I think it's a super complex. Like I look at all the young kids who's kind of, like I've got like a lot of like 16, 17-year-old kids in my family. And the fact that they've been isolated, the fact that they haven't been able to be with their peers, I think is actually pretty traumatic. And then I look at it like, me personally, I've been working nonstop for 12 years. And suddenly I was at home and not in an airport and I think that was incredibly healthy. Like a proper wake-up call, but also, I think it's a very complex, and I actually want to say that I don't think we really know. We might be able to, if you ask us in 5 years' time, we will be able to have a proper answer.
How about you, Michelle?
Well, we've all had to become technicians in a way that we haven't in the past, so there's been a learning curve with that. I think it's been an interesting time. I posted the show Coyote from home, and we did everything, sound mixes, looping, and everything all from our homes. We sent iPads to actors all over the world who did most of their looping in their closets because that is the most soundproof place. And it's been an interesting time with all the Zooms because we're Zooming into each other's homes. We get to see other people's families and a part of their lives. And so I think there's an unusual closeness that's happened as a result of some of that with people you're working. But of course, it's nothing like being there in person with them, and I miss that. But I was able to be home with my family while we were posting, and that was an incredible gift, and I loved it. And when I went back to work, I went back to do In Treatment for HBO, and the thing that was most exciting to me is even though we had all these restrictions and all these rules, we were still storytelling, and everybody was so excited to be back at work. And there was that wonderful positive energy and gratitude for having a job when so many other people didn't have a job. So I felt that old excitement, that we always get when we're lucky enough to tell stories for a living. And that was really encouraging to me. But I guess there's a camaraderie. It's hard. I mean, it's challenging wearing a mask for 12, 14 hours a day, that's hard. And watching out for each other and making sure people are eating and drinking and all those simple things that we take for granted. We approach it a different way. I mean, to Kenny's point, I can't wait to see your project, because I can't imagine shooting those giant scenes with 20 background players, which is something I'm about to embark on. So I really want to see your project.
And Lisa, like as we talked about, the pandemic kind of forced this whole different way of shooting, this kind of collaborative way of shooting too. Is that something that you'd even hope to bring into the future, like this kind of this new way of being?
I think the hardest part was that we had to share days. Like, so, Sierra, Lauren, and I would all be directing sometimes on the same day, and trying to figure out, oh, well, your scene needs more time than my scene. Whereas when you're directing all of your scenes together, you get to choose which one. So that was a little tricky. Honestly, I'm just really going to be freaked out when I'm walking down the street and I don't recognize anybody because I only know them, and it's when people, you sort of fill in the blank. You know what I mean? Like, you fill in the blank. Like I noticed that when someone does take down their mask to take a drink, I'm like, whoa, that's what you look like? I had no idea. So I'm really looking forward to seeing people's entire faces. And I actually really miss hugging people. This business is a very, we had some very sensitive scenes last year and even this year still going on. And, I broke the rule. Lauren and I were in trouble all the time. You guys, 6 feet apart. And we're like hug monsters. So, and, when you're dealing with sensitive subject matter, very difficult subject matter, and your actors really are giving every single thing that they have, and that you're not supposed to touch them or hug them, really heavy stuff. And they look at you like, please hug me. And I did it anyway. We all did. We all had to. It's just, we had to. And, we were wearing masks doing it, but it was better than not doing it. But I can't wait to see people's faces again. Communicating with actors through a mask is very difficult. They can't tell if you're happy. They can't tell if you're disappointed in a subtle way. It's that part of it for me has been very difficult. But I don't mind being alone. I'm cool with that. I actually like being alone. So.
And David, with the way the Daily Show has evolved with the pandemic, like what is even like? Do you have an idea of how it might evolve back, or now that you found this groove, like is there like a time frame for the studio to come back, or is this something that is going to be kept around for a while?
Great question. I wonder that as well. I mean, we were definitely, Trevor's maybe the only one who hasn't gone back to a studio setting in some way, but we were also the first one to broadcast when the pandemic started. So, and we just kind of got thrown into it, and we had to evolve our everything. Had to evolve, had to change, and we found the ability to innovate. I had a mentor who always told me that, creative opportunities are born out of restrictions. So we certainly had that happen. But yeah, I mean, to everyone's point here, there are some things that, like being in the room with someone, you can't replace it, especially when you're trying to write jokes. And the thing with jokes is it's like, they're very rarely written in a vacuum. It's like people are feeding, you get on a run, you're like riffing with people, and you sort of build it from that. And that's a very hard thing to replicate even over Zoom. So there's certainly, look, Trevor's not going to sit in his corner forever, right? But in terms of when exactly that'll change, I don't think that's just something that's still being thought of. And one thing I'll say about Trevor is he is a very intentional person. He's very intentional. He thinks through things. And I think that that's what makes him so great is he's thoughtful, and he always wants to act with intention. And so I'm sure wherever we go from here with the show will very much be because there was a lot of intention behind it.
Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us and taking the time to talk with us about your work. And it was a pleasure, especially talking with artists who are making such a wide variety and wide range of art on television right now. So it's been an absolute pleasure, and keep up the good work in these challenging, difficult, uncertain times that we're in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Daniel.